She finished coiling the cables with the same calm deliberation she applied to everything here, then slung her toolkit into its low locker and stepped out into the corridor, the insulation muffling the wind to a distant roar and the scent of warm metal and machine oil following her like a familiar ghost. The newcomers clustered by the mess hatch, bright threads of vapor wreathing their heads as they joked too loudly about hot food and warmer beds, the way soldiers will when they have not yet learned how thin comfort can be at the end of a patrol. The taller of the two alphas noticed her as she passed. His smile was the kind of practiced, aggressive grin intended to unsettle, but it faltered when he saw her hands, the faint abrasion along a knuckle, the way her shoulders sat tight, controlled, the posture of someone who had learned to hold herself steady under pressure. He stepped forward, carrying the scent of engine grease and cheap tobacco, and offered the sort of half-question that tries to trade civility for dominance. "You knew," he said, loud enough that the others turned. She looked at him, at the lines of mud on his boots, the insignia pinned to his sleeve, and decided not to give him the friction he sought. "Not new," she said, voice even, then added, "maintenance." That single word had currency here. It meant continuity, lifelines, the unseen systems everyone depended on but few respected. It deflated him more than a direct retort might have. Around them the troop murmured approval, irritation, the small social currents that signaled who would dominate the barracks' informal pecking order. The taller one tried a joke about technicians and their witchcraft, and the small circle laughed like it was a well-rehearsed cue. She let the corner of her mouth twitch, a fraction that could be read as amusement or boredom depending on the observer's wish, then kept walking. As she crossed into the open bay, a corporal from Comms Jenkins, a quiet man with tired eyes, caught her arm with relief. He'd been on the verge of paging for spare capacitors when she popped the transceiver back to life. "You nailed it," he said, an unclipped gratitude in his tone that was almost reverent. She shrugged. "Harmonic resonance. You were lucky a factory spec didn't mask the drift." He blinked. "You always talk like that," she asked, and he laughed, the sound brief and human. For a moment the bass felt less like a machine and more like the sum of the small mercy exchanges that kept it functioning. Then the lights over the repair bay flickered, an annoyance that at first felt like nothing more than a cold gust through the wiring, and the external speaker crackled to life with the duty officer's clipped voice, "All hands, listen up. Incoming check-in from the recon element." Static, and then the low, urgent cadence of a field report that ended with a single sentence which made the bay go very still. "We have movement on the ridge. Not tracked. Bearing 210, multiple heat signatures." The phrase hung between them like a thrown gauntlet. The newcomers exchanged looks that were no longer jocular. The Alpha's swagger tightened into readiness. Jenkins straightened as if hearing a personal alarm. She felt, with the same practiced calm she applied to solder and resonance, the circuitry of the base reconfigure itself, roles shifting, priorities reordering, routines collapsing into purpose. Her hands were steady. Her breathing deepened, a metronome finding a new tempo. Outside, the wind punched against the compound walls, faster now, filled with the salt and grit of an approaching storm. She walked to the glass of the camera monitor and zoomed in on the ridge. The grainy feed resolved into moving shadows, slow but deliberate. Not weather. Not animals. The troop carrier's driver killed the engine, and the group that had been laughing minutes ago snapped into formation, trained faces sliding on like armor. The Alpha barked commands short, economical, and his voice carried. For the first time she heard the voice beneath the bravado, attuned, competent, unafraid. He glanced toward her as if to marshal another ego battle, but whatever words he may have been preparing died on his tongue when the recon unit's feed updated with coordinates and a second report: "No uniforms visible." No comms beacon detected. Small arms fire overheard. Casualties 2 down. Casualties, Jenkins echoed, and the word was small and terrible. Protocol clicked into place around her like a familiar tool belt. The transceiver she'd just tuned would now be a weapon in someone else's hands. It signaled a pulse that enabled scouts to call for medevac, to request mortar corrections, to triangulate threats. The 3% above factory spec she had coaxed out of the array was not vanity, it might be the difference between a delayed ping and a life saved. She did not need to be told this, she felt it in the tightened set of her jaw, the way her palm slicked with sudden sweat. Lock comms on secure channel 3, the duty officer ordered. Prepare the quick response team. The Alpha's eyes flicked to her again, this time with something like acknowledgement. He did not apologize for his earlier insolence, he did not need to. The hierarchy here was not only rank and title but also the quiet authority of competence. Those who kept the lights on had leverage no posturing could buy. She stepped forward and keyed the secure channel, fingers moving with the calm rhythm of someone who had worked under far worse and learned how to make order of chaos. The monitor's green line held, unwavering, the chronometer's hand kept its slow, honest circle. Outside, figures in the dusk moved like chess pieces across the ridge, and beyond them the horizon held a smear of copper light, like the first hint of a world that refused to be simple. She thought, for a sliver of an instant, about the long list of variables she had once tried to control: resonance, voltage, signal degradation, and felt a bitter amusement at how little any of them mattered when people were involved, when decision and chance braided together into outcomes no metric could fully predict. Then she put all such thoughts away. There was a radio to man, orders to pass, and the small, stubborn work of keeping other people's lives possible. The wind howled its old anthem, indifferent and eternal. Inside the insulated walls she found, as she always did, a hotter truth, that in places like this, skill and stillness were weapons of their own kind, and she intended to use them. She let the book rest on her knuckles like an anchor, eyes flicking over the page only when she needed cover. The center of the rec room felt louder than the wind outside, full of the brittle bravado of men who had not yet measured the weight of a long deployment. Callan noticed her before the others did, partly because he looked for what he could claim and partly because he liked the sensation of being seen, so he cut across the room with easy swagger and a grin that tried too hard to be charming. He dropped into the seat opposite her as if he owned the table, slamming his gloves down so the coffee cup hopped and left a dark ring on the wood. "That look again," he said, voice loud and casual. "What, you reading up so you can talk us through the sky when you go on patrols?" There was a ripple of laughter like practiced thunder. The lieutenant smiled, pleased at the social currency, while Rurik lounged back against the wall, watching with those slow, calculating eyes that were more dangerous than Callan's bluster. Eva did not look up immediately, she let the book stay between them, a thin, deliberate barrier. "I prefer to listen," she said at last, turning a page with a motion so small it might have been wind. "Listening helps you learn what not to say." The words landed without heat, and for a heartbeat the laughter stalled enough for Callan to bristle. He reached out and flicked the corner of the paper with a finger, an adolescent poke disguised as masculine theater. "Come on, lighten up," he said. "You too serious for this place." His taunt was casual cruelty. In that room, such slights could escalate into real harm if left unanswered. Eva closed the book then, not with impatience but with the slow, deliberate calm of someone folding a circuit board into its case. She set it down gently, palms flat on the table so he could see the calluses and the faint scar across her left knuckle where a soldering iron had once found her. "I'm serious about things that matter," she said. "Like keeping your radio alive when the rest of you are busy being loud." Callan leaned in as if to puncture her with proximity. He expected flinch, or a stammer, or a line that would let him mount the social ladder. Instead she met him squarely, and in the shape of that look there was no invitation to conflict, only an unspoken assessment. The air shifted. Rurik's smile thinned. The lieutenant, sensing the tension might snap beyond his control, rose to his feet and offered a clumsy olive branch of a story about a training exercise, and the room, hungry for distraction, took it, chewing on the anecdote like a salve. For all that, Thorne, standing by the doorway with a coffee half drunk in his hand, caught her eye and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, the kind of endorsement that meant more than any formal praise. Later, when the base's external monitor chirped again with updated reconnaissance and the duty board flashed a new tasking for blockade of the ridge, the earlier social ripples felt trivially human against the cold logic of the incoming order: closure on movement, engagement if hostile, medevac prepared. Callan's bravado instantly recomposed itself into competence. He barked orders with the practiced cadence of a soldier who had been trained to transform bravado into action. Rurik folded his arms and watched the map with a predator's patience. Eva returned to her book for a moment less as sh.